the Locked On every day. Russ Heltman on the way as we are going to talk all things Bryan Brown and Tom Manning, introduced as defensive and offensive coordinators, respectively, for the Cincinnati Bearcats. We're also going to talk about the Bearcats basketball bouncing back, Bearcats men's basketball bouncing back against East Carolina last night. I don't know why my glasses are on, but that's okay. I actually look good with them today. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about transfers who have committed to Cincinnati this week, including a pair from Arizona State, D. Wiggins from, Louisville, I believe. I shouldn't, well, that might not have been good what I just did. Anyway, it's the beauty of a live room. We're live, so perfect. Yeah, so we are going to hit on that. We're going to hit on at the end a little bit with the Bengals and Ravens this Sunday in the wild card playoff game. That is going to be, D. Wiggins. So he committed from Louisville, formerly of Miami. So plenty to get to today here on Locked On Bearcats, the live room edition. So we'll take your comments, we'll take your questions, we'll take your everything in the chat as we wait for Russ Heltman to join me. It's been an eventful week, obviously, with Tom Manning and Bryan Brown being introduced as defensive and offensive coordinators. And I really think what we're starting to see is, and Justin Williams profiled this in The Athletic, Russ Heltman, Russ profiled this in All Bearcats. Really, he really profiled the recruiting and how Scott Satterfield is really putting their egos are being put aside, and it's a team effort what they're doing. You know, they're really starting hone in on the Ohio and the radius around Cincinnati, and they're going out tomorrow to, if you're listening to this live tomorrow, if you're listening to this on podcast form today, Friday, to go out and recruit. And I think they're off to a great start. So they are really really excited about this, and I'm really hopeful, and I'm seeing more comments not just on our YouTube videos, but in The Athletic, and I'm starting to see more people optimistic about Scott Satterfield, and I really think that this is going to be a great hire for the Cincinnati Bearcats. I think that, yes, year one, there might be some growing pains, but I think as we start to see this program recruit and get players that fit his system, I think that's only going to help. And I am really excited for what, spring ball is going to look like. I'm excited, for fall camp and who else is going to enter the transfer portal, commit via the transfer portal, and really just, get back to, where this program has been for the last 5 years. And speaking of that, I touched on this earlier this week. I talked about how the Bearcats against Georgia in 2020, and after the national championship on Monday night, and if it should make you appreciate where the Bearcats have been over the last 5 years in this incredible ride that the program was on. And the fact that the Bearcats played Georgia to a 1-point game, and that was a very good Georgia team, and that was in Atlanta, whereas TCU, who's going to be a future Big 12 opponent for the Bearcats, they lost 65-7. I mean, the game was over before it even started. So there is definitely a lot to be proud of what this program has accomplished over the last 5 years. And I do think, and I'm starting to see more comments that are negative towards Luke Fickell. And I think that I think that it's really starting to irritate me, because for a long time I have for a long time I have held Luke Fickell in high regard, and I will, and I always will. But I'm seeing comments that you don't like how he left. And I understand that. But if you're going to change your opinion overall about Luke Fickell, I don't understand why. I don't understand why you would change your opinion because of the way he left. And I saw someone said that it was worse than the way Brian Kelly left. I look, do we know everything? I don't think so. But you can't say the way Luke Fickell left was worse than Brian Kelly. And with that, we bring on the man, the myth, the legend, the driving force behind all Bearcats and WMKV 89.3, Russ. Russ, it's been a eventful week for both of us. Defenseman, offensive coordinators introduced. That was on Tuesday. Transfers have rolled in. Basketball last night, a 9 o'clock tip. I know you don't like the 9 o'clock tip, neither do I. But a good win last night for the Bearcats, and we've got fans rolling into the live room. We've got the chat going. So what say you get this started?
Let's into it, Alex. A lot to get to, not a lot of time to do it.
Here we go. Here on Locked On Bearcats.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into the Locked On Bearcats weekly live room. I'm Alex Frank of Locked On Bearcats. Russ Heltman, my colleague at All Bearcats and Sports Illustrated, joining me today. Today's episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online, as you covered this season, with more props, odds, and lines than where the game starts. I'm Alex Frank. He's Russ Heltman. We got the chat going. We'll get to your questions, comments, and concerns. Russ, let's start with the big news of the week. Bryan Brown and Tom Manning introduced as defensive and offensive coordinators, respectively. What was your biggest takeaways from those from the press conference?
I think a lot more takeaways defensively than offensively. To me, it seems Satterfield and Manning are going to kind of huddle together over these next few weeks. The rest of that offensive staff, they're going to try to put together the correct system, tweak to Satterfield's system. That kind of outside zone running scheme paired with the dual threat running quarterback. You and I have talked about that ad nauseum over the past 2 months. Tweak that to this current roster and its strengths as we continue to kind of finalize things. I would expect maybe 3 or maybe multiple transfers remaining, a couple more trailing here and there, but largely I think we're starting to see the dust settle offensively and defensively, both roster-wise and staff-wise for this Bearcats program. And so in terms of the offense, I'm not quite sure what we're going to get from Tom Manning, what kind of influence he's going to bring to Satterfield's system. Scott did say he's going to continue to call plays, but that would be a continuation from his kind of groupthink mentality on play calling while he was at Louisville and at Appalachian State, where he does a lot of collaboration with his offensive line coach, Nick Cardwell, with Manning, with the receivers coaches. Everybody on that offensive staff kind of comes together as one to build those game plans, those play strategies. But defensively, that's where I'm really intrigued. And I'm really excited to see what Ryan Brown's habit creating kind of 3-4, more so 4-2-5 tweaked type of defensive hybrid look we can get on a team and a roster defensively out of this Black Cats crew that should be able to transition very nicely from that 3-3-5 look to this 3-4, more 4-2-5 downhill attacking defense that Bryan Brown is bringing to the table. And he kind of highlighted pretty in depth during his press conference this earlier in the week.
All right, so it sounds like the Bearcats are going to go to a more traditional defense, which is something that I was pushing for a lot towards the end of the Luke Fickell era. So it's great to hear that that's what Bryan Brown is striving towards. Let me ask you this, because I found it interesting when Scott Satterfield said that he's going to continue to call plays. So that's something that you expected. Is that really a huge development, Russ? How do you explain this?
I think I expected that. Yeah, I mean, you're hiring Scott Satterfield first and foremost for the staff that he can build, the talent he can bring in, and then his system, his offensive acumen. That's the way he's built up his entire career. That's how he's launched his head coaching career from into Appalachian State, out of Appalachian State to Louisville, and then from Louisville here to Cincinnati on what people are saying is a lateral move, but I would say Cincinnati is a slight step up. Maybe it is a lateral move. I don't know. You can kind of have those arguments elsewhere, but overall, Scott Satterfield has leaned on his acumen as a play caller throughout the past decade to be able to get to where he is today. And it's not surprising to me that he's going to keep leaning on that to get to even greater heights in the future.
You've touched on this week. Justin Williams touched on this week. I've read both of what you guys wrote, talking about how the Bearcats are really, and Satterfield staff, really putting egos aside. And it's a team effort here when we talk about recruiting in the state of Ohio, Russ. And it's been this program's identity over the last 20 years. And obviously, if you're listening to this live, you know that the Bearcats are going to recruit tomorrow in the state of Cincinnati, as Luke Fickell used to say, in that 50-mile radius. If you're listening to this in podcast form, obviously that's today, Friday. So, Russ, kind of touch on Satterfield's recruiting philosophy, what you've been seeing over the last, this is his 5th or 6th week on the job. Just kind of touch on, how he and this staff are doing as far as recruiting, both in Cincinnati, the transfer portal. We've got some transfers rolling in, this week. Kind of touch on that a little bit for us.
Yeah, it seems like Scott Satterfield is just diving head over heels right into the city of Cincinnati, right into the 300-mile radius that they're going to be pursuing here. Made a direct acknowledgement of that in his press conference. Said, quote, "A huge emphasis on the city of Cincinnati within 300 miles for recruiting. We are going back on the road Friday and blitzing the city, sending everybody out within 50 miles right here and hitting as many schools as we can hit. It starts in our backyard." That's a great sentiment. That's something that is going to be the lifeblood of this program, in my opinion, is not only getting that national footprint, getting those 4, maybe a 5-star eventually, knock on wood, Bearcats fans are hoping, getting those 4, maybe 5 stars nationally into the fold here and there, but making sure that you do not let the momentum from the past 5 years in this city that this program has created under Luke Fickell slip away with this new staff. And it just shows to me the fact that he is adamantly laying out the plan for local recruiting, while also I'm writing up all these offers and writing up all these recruiting roundups, pursuing high 4-star, high 3-star talent all around the country, and specifically in a nice little pocket in the Southeast. It just should make you really confident that the talent coffers for this program are going to be at the level you need them to be in the Big 12 to compete with some of the best teams in the country. TCU just got whooped in the national title, but a Big 12 team just played in the national championship game for a reason. It's one of the best conferences in the nation. TCU had to get by through the skin of their teeth in multiple games in that conference, and you're going to need as much talent as possible to do that. The diversity and the hybrid recruiting scheme here, I think, could help them afford themselves a lot of opportunities with that talent over the next few recruiting cycles.
And we're seeing that the Big 12 is a very competitive conference, and Josh Neighbors touched on this. How does the Big 12 close that gap between themselves and the Big 10 and the SEC? Sure, TCU beat Michigan, but that national championship game Monday night, Russ, is the first time we've talked since that game. Now, here's something that, okay, so I see the comments on our YouTube videos. I see the comments on social media. I see them on Twitter. I see them in The Athletic. Don't mean to bring up a competitor, Russ, but it does feel like more fans are showing up, or there's more optimism being shown for Scott Satterfield. And what are we? So today is January, if you're listening to this live, January 12th. So we are, if my University of Cincinnati math can bail me out here, 39 days. There we go. 39 days into the Satterfield era. Give me your, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really optimistic, 1 the alternative. Where are you at with the optimism level of Scott Satterfield and what he's done so far and what's going to happen throughout the remainder of the winter and into spring ball?
I'd say I'm like a 6.5, 7, probably leaning more towards the 7 range. I think you can be pretty optimistic about the things that have gone down so far. You can be pretty optimistic about the number one thing, and I will keep driving this home. The number one thing that Scott Satterfield has to get right, and we won't know if he gets it right until 3 years of example for us to chew with, is this staff. And it seemed to me, with the mix of Kerry Combs and Walt Stewart, keeping some former staffers on the team and keeping their influence recruiting wise here as well. You bring in Josh Stepp, Tom Manning. You step with him at Louisville. Tom Manning, an outside force. Well, coach with Satterfield as a GA in Toledo back in the 2000s. Went his way with who was it, Matt Campbell at Iowa State and Toledo.
Yeah.
After that, and the two have now rekindled their relationship as the OC and head coach for Cincinnati. Tom Manning, with many years of experience in the Big 12, had a down year offensively. You and I talked about that last week with Iowa State, but built up the profile of Brock Purdy, built up the profile of Breece Hall. So there's so many different, I think, good chemistry type of mixes going on with the staff that I think that's the number one reason that you can be optimistic. And number two is the NIL and the recruiting and the transfer portal messages from Scott Satterfield are exactly what you want them to be. We don't love what we're having to deal with, but we're going to deal with it all the same because we know that's how you create championship level football programs in today's day and age of college football. You have to tap into that transfer portal, which they are doing, and they are trying to get that NIL Cincy Reigns program ramped up as quickly as possible so that these reported, according to The Athletic, 6-figure offers to multiple defensive Black Cats members that have been offered over the past few weeks don't pull away that talent from this program with around 6 days remaining in the transfer portal window before players cannot declare that they are going to transfer until I believe the spring window opens first week of May, I'm pretty sure.
Well, and I definitely really like the way the Bearcats are kind of embracing the modern tactics of college football, Russ. You talk about the transfer portal, you talk about NIL, and I really do believe that this is all going to benefit the Bearcats football program in year one. I said this before you joined me. I don't know what year one is going to look like of the Satterfield era and in the Big 12, but I do know this. I think come year two, year three, this program is going to be hitting its stride, and there's still obviously a lot of questions left to be answered. You know, what happens at quarterback? Does Evan Prater stay? What happens at linebacker? You know, do Deshaun Pace and Jaheim Thomas stick around? I think one area we don't have to worry about is defensive line, Russ. I mean, that defensive line room looks pretty much the same as it did last year. Malik Vann coming back, Russ. I mean, how surprised were you with that?
I was not that surprised, honestly. I was thinking if he was going to be eligible for that medical red shirt, just the painful nature, obviously physically, but also emotionally, just you come back for this final one last run. You're trying to push all your chips in this basket in terms of getting some NFL looks down the line. If you're Malik Vann, you want to get that shot one more time, especially if you don't have to pay a price to get that opportunity and come back to the UC Bearcats roster. He should be a plug-and-play starter right away.
Yeah.
And I think would be he's going to be another nice piece for this defensive line to go with Dante Corleone. Jawan Briggs talked to us earlier in the week. Yeah. It seems like he and the rest of the defensive line are very excited to get into this kind of hybrid 3-down lineman with an extra linebacker hanging off the edge look from Brian Brown's defense. The defensive linemen are getting in a lot of voluntary workouts right now. They're maximizing all the voluntary time that they can do right now in these kind of restricted off-season windows to be able to make sure that the first season of Scott Satterfield is not as similar record-wise as the first season of Luke Fickell.
Yeah, hopefully. And I do think that it will be much better than 4-8 because of the talent that is here. And because, again, Satterfield's entering a much better situation than Luke Fickell inherited when he took over back in 2017. So let me ask you this. A lot of transfers have committed this week. Touch on those if you can for us and who the most impactful transfer could be.
Well, the most impactful transfer of the week in my opinion is definitely Daniel Griesiak. Like, the guy is a top 20 transfer in this entire portal. He is a fantastic player, a guy that I think slot right in and be that kind of Amir Abdullah type of replacement in this Bryan Brown scheme. Abdullah was an all-American level player for Louisville last year, was fantastic. Griesiak, I think, can bring that same kind of impact as a top 25 sack artist in 2022 for the Utah State Aggies. Was the best pass rusher. That kind of goes without saying. 13 tackles for loss out of a couple pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, recoverable as well. He, to me, can have that similar type of impact that Ivan Pace Jr. had as a havoc creator on this defensive line. To me, he's a plug-and-play starter, and Daniel Griesiak told Justin Williams of The Athletic that Bryan Brown's defense and the fact that they forced a top 5 mark with 50 sacks this year, that immediately stood out to him and had him thinking, man, I can get some serious production on this team in my final year of eligibility and give myself a nice up year for NFL looks in 2024.
Yeah, Louisville's statistics defensively were very high, top 25 categories, top 25 in a lot of categories, as I touched on earlier this week last year. So definitely a big transfer pickup there. D. Wiggins transferring from Louisville, that can help the wide receiver room.
Yeah, if he stays healthy, Alex, that's a huge option there. He was goal starter last year, but unfortunately had a season-ending injury, I believe, in week 3 that kind of knocked out his entire season. So that's a good addition. So Sterling Burkhalter as well, North Carolina A&T receiver, a nice long player, can really stretch the field offensively. And so you get those 2 receivers. It makes you feel a little bit better, definitely, about that receiving room going into 2023.
Absolutely. It needs some replenishing, that is for sure. We'll get to some basketball conversation. Russ, a good bounce-back win for the Bearcats last night against East Carolina, something that we're starting to see that might be best for this Bearcats team over the last 3 games. I really like what I'm seeing after this particular move was made. We'll get to that. We'll look ahead to Saturday's game at SMU. And then we'll finish things off with some Bengals-Ravens conversation because, Russ, you do also write for All Bengals, and because it is playoff time in Cincinnati. We'll get to all of that after I tell you all how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is right now your number 1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can head there right now for the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from the NFL playoffs to basketball, the NBA, college basketball in full swing. We've got it all at betonline.net. Maybe you want to head there to look at the line for the Bengals and Ravens on Sunday night. The Bengals currently a 9-point favorite. 9-point favorite. Number 9 is a good number. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thanks again for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. Make sure you check out Locked On, our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball all in one place. Plus, hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Speaking of which, basketball, Russ, the Bearcats last night, 83-55 winners over East Carolina. Jeremiah Davenport, another solid performance. Really, since he accepted the 6th man role, he has been having, if you take away the Houston game Sunday, of course, he's had 2 really good games in that role, Russ. Is this what's best for him and the team?
1,000%. I mean, Odi Oguama should be the starter in there. He gives you a lot more defensive acumen at the beginning of games, gives you a little bit more acumen at the beginning of games, and it allows Jeremiah Davenport to kind of just come in, not press right away, just be that instant offense coming off the bench. And he's been really, really great in that role of the last few games, save for the Houston outing, which Wes Miller, I'm with him in this respect. Jeremiah Davenport took maybe 2 bad shots in that Houston game, but the rest of those 0 for 7 3-point barrage mark was pretty solid in terms of shot quality. It's just they didn't go in. Last night, the shots were good as well, and they went in as the Bearcats hit. What did they hit? 14 threes last night, 10 in the first half. It was an absolute barrage from outside. You had a stretch where after each timeout, you'd have Landers not only start things off in the game, back-to-back triples. Then Jeremiah Davenport, back-to-back triples. Then Josh Reed, back-to-back triples. It was just an onslaught offensively from a Bearcats team that's one of the best in the AAC, if not the best offensive team. And the Jeremiah Davenport, who, to me, it's so hard to get a gauge on this team and what their actual ceiling is, because they either get beat by double digits against a good team, or the one close game that they have had against a good team, 80-77 loss to Xavier, or they go and destroy a bad team by 30. And it's like, to me, I keep saying it, it speaks to the coaching prowess of Wes Miller. It speaks to his system. And then the top end of those results, the playing the great teams, that to me speaks to that system and that coach and his X's and O's taking them to a ceiling. where the talent just can't get over. And that to me is where this Bearcats program is right now. They are just on the precipice of being a team
Yeah.
good enough to compete and play in the NCAA tournament, but they just don't quite have that top end talent to get them there. And we'll see if they can figure it out. You get a huge opportunity of these final few weeks of January, the final 2 games of January at home, I believe, against Memphis, and then you go to Houston. That's the season right there. That's the entire season. If you can't find a way to go 2 on that stretch, then you're going to be heading to the NIT or a different tournament besides the NCAA tournament, just for the fact of the matter that the strength of schedule is not good enough. They're not going to have any quad 1 victories at the end of the season if they don't beat Houston in this upcoming game at the end of the month. And it's like, what do you know? Another game this coming weekend, SMU, 4 p.m., 6-11 Mustangs team, trying to go through a coaching change right now. It's similar to ECU. They should win by double digits, and it's not going to really help them make a strong case to go into the NCAA tournament, unfortunately, because SMU, just one of those 3 bad teams in the AAC outside of the top 100. So I loved what I saw from Jeremiah Davenport since he's gone to the bench, outside of obviously the 0 for 7 shooting mark in a game that you can't go 0 for 7. That's the bottom line. But it's that in these high-level opponent matchups, when the talent has to match the great talent, it just hasn't quite been there for UC this season.
Well, consider that a tease for next week when we hit the live room. Should be back to Wednesday at 12:30. The Bearcats with 2 crucial games, as Russ, you alluded to. Memphis, I mean, those games are always barn burners. And then Houston, the big one, down in Texas. So the Bearcats do play SMU on Saturday. If you listen to this on podcast form, that's tomorrow. They play at USF next Wednesday. 2 teams towards the bottom of the conference. They got to bank these wins, Russ, and then, I mean, how crucial of a stretch is this for the Bearcats right now? Because I feel like once January ends, the schedule really kind of lightens up a little bit. Yeah, you got one more trip to Memphis, but I'm saying that if you can bank these 2 wins coming up, and then what are we looking at? A split with Memphis and Houston? Or what do they have to do?
I mean, look at that now. The net rankings, it's really, really difficult to see Bearcats unless they go undefeated through the UCF game, seeing them getting into an at-large bid position. It's just they're so far behind UCF right now for that 3rd spot. UCF on the net, they are 37th overall, and Memphis is a slick 57th. So you're 50 spots behind them almost if you're Cincinnati at 87th overall, a cool 35 spots behind Memphis. So to me, you got to win. You got to go on a run. You have to win all the games the rest of this month. You have one quad 1 opportunity left, one quad 1 win opportunity. And they are so far this season 0-4 in those chances. Like, you got to notch a quad 1 win. If they don't notch a quad 1 win this season, they could probably lose only to Houston and Memphis the rest of the year, and they still won't get in the tournament because the strength of schedule is so bad. Obviously, if they make it to the NCAA final and Houston isn't playing and they win that, they get in as the conference champion. But just so many missed opportunities in terms of high-level teams that they haven't beaten this year, and this is the position that they're left in. I would love to cover an NCAA tournament team. I would love to say they're in a better spot, but they simply are not. The opportunities to beat good teams have been there. They have not taken them, and now you need to go to SMU and win. You need to go to South Florida and win.
Yeah.
You need to come home against Memphis, win that game. You need to go to Houston. I'll cut them some slack. If they cover there and they lose by 5 points, 1 possession game, maybe that helps you a little bit enough in the net that can be counted as a solid performance, boosting your NCAA tournament. Got to beat Tulsa at home, and then you have to beat UCF at home. If you lose to UCF, game, set, match, the season is over in terms of at-large opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to say to the teams you've lost to are really good, like Xavier and Houston, but you got to eventually win a game against the big dogs in college basketball. We'll hear from 2 of our sponsors, and then if you're listening to this on audio, you'll hear from 2 of our sponsors, and we'll get into Bengals and Ravens on Sunday right here on Locked On Bearcats. Russ, you also write for All Bengals. You do the Bengals bets for All Bengals, our good buddy James Rapine. By the way, congratulations to him and his wife Emily. They just welcomed a baby girl into the world, Quinn. Very happy for them. Russ, so the Bengals and Ravens round 3 on Sunday. I'm really confident that this is going to be a Bengals win. I'm really confident saying the Bengals win convincingly. Do you agree with me?
I'm with you all the way, 1,000%. I hammered the Bengals -5.5 earlier in the week. Told all my buddies, get this while you can because this will not be -5.5 for long. Bing, bang, boom. 3 days later, it's -10. And that just goes to show the Ravens were always playing facetious with Lamar Jackson's injury status. He is not going to suit up this week. I would be shocked if he's out there playing for the Ravens. And when you don't have Lamar Jackson, you have a bottom 8 offense in the NFL, and a bottom 8 offense going up against a top 7 offense. I don't think the Ravens defense is close to as good enough to pull off a week 1 Steelers-like performance with 5 forced turnovers, no turnovers for themselves, a pick 6, a blocked kick. That's the only reason the Bengals are even playing the Ravens right now. It's because all of those things happened on top of Clark Harris's torn bicep in that game to give the result to Pittsburgh miraculously. And so if the Bengals had won that one, they would be playing the Miami Dolphins, the 2 seed, and they would be likely hosting the Bills next week instead of going to Buffalo in all likelihood. But ifs and buts, candies and nuts, every day would be Christmas. It's not. And this is the situation the Bengals are in. They have a lot to play for on Sunday, a lot of motivation in terms of some chippy play in the previous game. And what more could you ask for starting off your AFC playoff run against one of your most hated rivals, and a rival that is completely obliterated at the quarterback position injury-wise?
Yeah, they really are. Okay, so let me ask you this, because you've grown up a Bengals fan. I've grown up a Bengals fan. Are the Ravens becoming a hated rival? Because for so long, like, we know the Steelers have been, the Browns, I mean, their fans are delusional, whatever. But the Ravens, like, I've always had a tremendous respect for, because I love the way their organization historically has done things. But like, now that after last week with the dirty hits and the chippiness, are you saying the Ravens are now a hated rival? Like, I didn't think we were going to get to this point.
Oh yeah, they're definitely a hated rival. Even I think they're more this year. They're more in the crosshairs than the Steelers are even this year, because the Ravens are the competition. They're the main threat for the AFC title. Everybody in the offseason, oh, the Ravens are going to win the AFC title. Bet the Ravens. Oh, the Bengals.
AFC title.
Yeah,
did they really?
I heard it all offseason. AFC North title. I meant to say AFC North title.
Okay, that's more realistic.
But, like, the Bengals have the 15th best odds to make the Super Bowl. It's just. Yeah, people get really upset about that. Fans get really annoyed with all that, especially when the results that end up happening continue to laugh in the face of the projections.
I mean, and we've seen that. I mean, the Bengals beat the Ravens last week, and I think they will on Sunday. I'm confident in saying that. It's a nice day here in Georgia. It's supposed to be good weather up in Cincinnati for the playoff game on Sunday. Russ, I'm sure you're looking forward to watching it. I'm looking forward to watching it. Definitely. So the AFC, excuse me, sorry, that came up on me. The AFC, like, I look at the playoff picture, and yes, if the Bengals win, they're probably going to Buffalo. Not probably, they are, because Skylar Thompson's not going up to Buffalo and winning. I think geez. So what are the chances beyond this weekend for the Bengals? How?
I'd pick them every week. There's no team in the AFC I would pick over the Bengals. Those are the chances.
Interesting. Even so, you would pick them to beat the Bills in Buffalo. Interesting. All right. Comment on Twitter at Russ Heltman 11. He's on All Bearcats. I'm on All Bearcats. Plenty of coverage as the Bearcats prepare to go to SMU on Saturday. We'll, of course, have much more on the transfer portal next week on Locked On Bearcats. Coaching staff's been rounded out, and it feels like football season already, Russ. So
that it does. And if those Bearcats can get it done next week, start this win streak up again, maybe they can get 2 segments, but we got to get to that point first.
We do, but we will get there. Not a lot of, only one comment. Seth Fangman saying go Bearcats. Yes, go Bearcats. By the way, if I didn't acknowledge this, major happiness for DeMar Hamlin, Russ. He is home from the hospital. How about that?
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing way to end this show. Amazing way to kind of get to the middle of our week yesterday, and gotta love it. Gotta love it for the Hamlin family, and it's fantastic. Kind of hopefully tying a bow on a story that started awful and has slowly but surely turned into a great one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very, very happy for him and continuing to wish him all the best in his recovery. Russ, thank you for joining me. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next week, man. Always good talking to you and always good to do this. Oh, I think we got
Seth said,
Spangler
great
just said
stuff,
great
guys.
stuff.
Just subbed. Thank you, Seth.
Hey,
I appreciate you.
Yes. Thank you, Seth. Thank you. Thank you, Russ. And I'll talk to you next week.
Of course, always, Alex. A lot of fun. We'll do it again next week. See ya.
Absolutely. Russ Heltman is my colleague at all Bearcats and Sports Illustrated, kind enough to join me today here on Locked On Bearcats. As for me, I'm on Twitter at Frankie_Natty with 2 N's and NNATI. On Instagram, AlexFrankNat_ and email at alex3frank@gmail.com. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen today. For your second listen, check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court, plus hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday right here on Locked On Bearcats. I'm Alex Frank for Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great weekend, and I'll be back with you on